Call to order. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Today is June 29th, 2018, and we are present for the second day of the Acupuncture Board meeting. The meeting is taking place in the Tower Room, Larry Hotel, San Diego, 950 Hotel Circle North, San Diego, California, 92108. This meeting is being webcast, and the time is now 9 o'clock, 9:05. I would like to start out by thanking our former members, Mr. Francisco Xie and Ms. Jenny Kang, for all the work they carried out protecting the public for the past 5 years. I would like to thank our board member, Vice President, Mr. Kim Chen, Mr. Ruben Osorio, and Mr. John Harabedin for their continued service to the board and the people of California. Thank you. I also want to thank our legal counsel, Mrs. Sava Bojak, who has been working very closely with the board members and board staff to guide us through all the issues. And I would also like to thank our executive officer, Mr. Ben Boudia, and the staff members who has been working really hard for the past year with various issues and also prepare for the sunset. And now for the 2 days event in San Diego. So I really appreciate the staff for setting up for this. And the board is grateful to each of you for your support to uphold its highest priority to protecting the public. Now let's move to the item agenda number 15.
Do we want to do roll call? Establish roll call?
Yes, let's see that. I'm sorry. Mark, please perform roll call to establish a quorum.
Dr. Amy Matecki?
Present.
Kipman Chan?
Yes.
John Harabedian?
Here.
Ruben Osorio?
Yes.
4-0, we have a quorum with 1 licensed member present.
Thank you, Mark. So the board will now hear the public comment for the items not on the agenda. Please.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank the board and the executive officer and all the members of the California Acupuncture Board. Thank you for all your good work. There's 2 matters that I wanted to bring up for the record, and hopefully we can have a resolution. So how long do I have? 3 minutes? Is that it?
We would like to have
Okay.
2 minutes.
2
but
minutes,
it's 3
okay.
minutes.
I'm put my stopwatch on. Unfortunately,
you.
I cannot read in 2 minutes the published peer reviews article of this particular student of ours who has a master's in science and has 2 masters and also a PhD in neuroscience and has published 17 peer-reviewed articles. So it would definitely take me over the 2 minutes to read all those 17 articles and the publication. Again, these are peer-reviewed articles on level 1st-tier medical journals. So not only her, but we have numerous students that are in the same position. We have given them transfer credit 4 or 5 years ago, and some new students that also have MDs and PhDs in biogenetics and neuroscience. And according to the communication from the board, this says transfer credit of OM research should be given for students taking OM research type courses at a OM school. So I think that these students that have done the research is research, as you know, doctor, and they have finished their peer-reviewed article. One of the journals, like Journal of Neuroscience, just to mention one. I can go on and mention all the journals, but I'm going to skip that. Journal of Acta Neurologica Experimentalis, Journal of Neuroscience for Rehabilitation, the Journal of Allied Health, Journal of Physical Therapy, Journal of Orthopedical Physical Therapy Practice, and on and on and on. So this is one case. Another case has a master from Harvard University. And I believe that, you know, as Empress College, we do very due diligence on their qualification, and I believe that should fulfill research, OM research or any research. The second point I would like to bring up is we have some new students that are transferred from the UC system. In other words, they have finished University of California, San Diego, University of California at UCLA, University of California at Berkeley, and they're biology majors. They have finished the whole 4-year biology program, yet they do not have general biology. They have cellular biology. There is no general biology for biology major, and I believe those students should also be qualified to have the transfer credits. So those are my 2 points. I hope that we can get some resolution on this because she's ready to take the exam, and right now it's a little bit of an unclear area. Thank you very much for your understanding.
Thank you.
Oh, did I say who I am? Jacques Mormarco, Empress College, Santa Monica.
Morning, board member and staff members. I'm Henry Chui from South Baylor University, and I also bring this issue regarding about the transfer credit policy and regulation that back in March 2018, I brought with a TC for biology class, as Jack mentioned that. We have a student, we gave them a transfer credit for the microbiology, molecular biology. It's like more advanced biology class than general biology class. However, we had an issue with the state board that state board mentioned that they have to take the general biology, even though they completed microbiology and molecular biology. And also the recent issue that the student planning to take the October state board year 2018, that we have mentioned about the statistic class. We have given this transfer credit for last 10 plus years because I started working South Baylor 2007. And when I started the working South Baylor, that statistic class was transferred for our research methodology class. Even myself, I took the statistic class from community college and I got transfer credit on that. However, all of a sudden, the acupuncture board, they didn't accept the statistic class as a transfer credit. And we didn't know that this issue until one of the students informed our school. So if this issue next time, please inform the school in advance. This way, we will give you the proper guideline to the acupuncture school student, or please consider this case one more time. The statistic class, it is covered our research methodology class at South Baylor University. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Yoon Kim, President of Empress College. I just want to reinforce what my colleagues have said about the transfer credit evaluation. We know that the board is doing due diligence. The staff really wants to make sure that students have all the requirements to be able to take the boards. But, you know, in these two examples of biology majors having to take general biology, it doesn't make any sense. So we hope that the board can review the curriculum requirements and make sure that students who do have the education that the board requires of the examinees are able to take the boards. We do appreciate the board's decision to move towards computerized based testing. Currently, there is no information on the board about this big change. We welcome it, but a number of our students have concerns and questions. So we've drawn up a list of questions that could potentially be on the board's website as an FAQ. They have questions about the time frame for a graduate not passing the CALE for the first time and the time before that they can retake the exam. With the applicant who failed the exam for the first time, have to reapply with a different application for retaking the exam. The exam, we understand, will be a linear format. Within this format, will test takers be able to go back and review questions? What would be the total on the time, the clock time for each section of the exam? What is the break time between the first 100 questions and the second 100 questions? Will the exam start time for each of the testing center be the same, morning, afternoons? How will special needs extra test extra test time takers be accommodated at the centers? And what is the anticipated time for the test takers to know their CAIL results? So we don't know if the decisions have been made, but it would be very, very helpful for our students to have this information in advance, and if it could be publicly posted on the board's website, it would be very helpful. And I have copies of those questions that our students have.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Batecki and the board. I am Dr. Michael Fox, and I am speaking to you today as the chair of the California Acupuncture and Traditional Medicine Association. I wanted to update the board on the profession's efforts to unify and form one statewide association. As you're all very aware, representation of acupuncturists in the state has been very fractured over these decades, with more than 20 different associations. Nearly every other healthcare association has one single unified group to represent their trade rather than multiple associations. Beginning in December 2017, several stakeholder meetings, as facilitated by some assembly members, were held across the state to bring together the leadership of our associations and as well as unaffiliated individuals. Even with our differences, our vast differences, we have all agreed that our current method of representation has led to more conflict and confusion and a lack of clarity when presenting our trade to the board and to the legislators. And we decided as a group that it's time for California acupuncturists to unify. So we have embarked on a monumental effort to speak with one unified voice by creating the California Acupuncture and Traditional Medicine Association. We're going to be calling it CALAPMA. Our steering committee consists of 12 members. 8 of those members are leaders of existing acupuncture trade associations in California. 3 are at-large members, currently unaffiliated or affiliated with multiple members, and we have 1 student member. All of whom are working collaboratively to structure and form CALAPMA. Our goal is to form a professional statewide association built on the democratic processes and transparency, and advocate for acupuncturists to the board and to the legislature, as well as provide substantive benefits for our members. So, we have already succeeded in incorporating. All right, that was a quick thing. We are awaiting approval of our tax-exempt 501c6 status. That will take 60 days or so with the IRS, but we are in the process of doing that. We expect by September or the end of summer to be fully operational with offices in Sacramento. We have already had 3 steering committee meetings with our structure. Those are being held monthly. Our next meeting is July 22nd in Los Angeles. After that, we will have one in Oakland and one further up north by the end of September. And we are commencing with town hall meetings. Our first 2 meetings are scheduled for July 7th and 8th in Oakland and Berkeley. And those will be informational meetings for licensed acupuncturists in the States. So that's where we are right now. Our next meeting, as I said, is July 22nd. Dr. Yongping Chen is also here today. She is our chairman of the governance committee. She will be helping us to carve out our structure and our bylaws and things like that. We expect to have that done in 4 or 5 weeks. And then I would say, there's always natural tensions. These groups have a lot of history, a lot of differences, and a lot of difficulties. And yet, we're plowing through this. We're working together. We're making progress. And so I wanted to assure you that we really are going to come together and make this happen. So I welcome any questions if you have them later. And I will keep you apprised of our formation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Dr. Michael Fox. He's our chair, so I'm one of the association from Los Angeles area. Thank you, everybody. Good morning for the board and the staff member. Thank you for all the years. A former board member too, for all the wonderful job you've done. And I'm represent California Acupuncture United Association called CAUA, C-A-U-A, and I'm the current chair. My name is Yongping Chen. So congratulations for all of you just passed Senator Sunset Review. And I wrote a letter represent our association to the Assembly and the Senator, and I was asked by Senator Sarah, do I support AB 3142? I said, I support if amended. So my association as the acupuncture stakeholder, our position is we support 4 years renew, not 2 years, because we see the California acupuncture and the whole nation acupuncture profession is growing. When the whole country facing the opioid crisis, in the battle of the opioid crisis, we see acupuncture plays a very important role. I would say one of the most important alternative way to approach to fight the opioid. So we see the profession is growing, and accordingly, acupuncture board will have more work, busy together, work together with acupuncture acupuncturists to better protect the consumer. So we think every 4 years is better for everything works smoothly, effectively, efficiently, and the board does not need to spend a whole year, the half of the time to do the preparation of the sunset review. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Yejia Li. I'm representing the chairman of American Society of Chinese Medicine, Ma Xue, and the Secretariat General Xia Li. We just think it's better to have the sunset review every 4 years instead of 2 years, because it took us too much time to prepare. So if we change that to 2 years, we can have more time to care about acupuncturists and help more customers. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comments? No? Okay. Now let's move to item agenda number 15.
16.
16.
16, sorry.
Thank
Okay,
you, Dr.
let's-
Mateki. For my first report, I'll be reporting on a staff update. As we heard earlier, the budget has been passed, and our budget change proposal has been accepted, so we will be starting the hiring process for a manager, which will be very helpful. This will be the first time we'll have an additional manager outside of the executive officer, so that'll be very helpful in the operations of the board. We are also filling a vacancy in the licensing section, so we anticipate that to be done before the end of summer as well. Those additional hands on deck will be very helpful. Any questions on the staffing update? For the budget update, if you can turn to item 16B, you can take a look at our fund condition and our expenditures report. This is for fiscal month 10. And what you can see ultimately is right now we'll have about nearly $300,000 that we have not spent, so we are under budget, and we are very much looking at that bottom line. and making sure that we can get all the equipment and staffing that we need to be able to continue working with our stakeholders to address all these issues that we've been tackling in the last 2 years, at least under my and Amy, Dr. Mateki's leadership. Are there any questions in regards to the fund condition? I can also update you that we are transitioning, the whole state has been transitioning to the fiscal system as opposed to the CalSTARS reporting system. This is a new reporting system for our budget. And this is one of the reports from the fiscal system. And we should be caught up probably in the next month or two as the system has transitioned to this new process of reporting. So we'll be able to get you some more reports in the upcoming meetings.
Yeah, I look at the analyze for fund condition,
Yes.
and we've been talk about it and a few times the last few years.
Mhm.
And the incoming revenue is always short of the outgoing fund. So each year is around 800,000 to 1 million. So look at it, this 3 years analyze. The last fiscal year, 2016 to 17, we have about 500,000 short. The current year 2017 to 18, we had around 800,000, almost 900,000 short. The future from 2018 to 19, we still short about 800,000. And even though the month to reserve, we have the 10 months. Now, according to the budget director told us is that we have to apply the fund, the fee increase, but you take about 2 years. Now, if we continue to this and past 2 years, get the okay from the Congress, from the legislation, we are very, very in the bad condition. So I urge the board to talk to the budget director and make sure we are in the time frame to request the fee increase, because right now we are operate under the loan, which is that we lent out 5 million a few years ago. Right now we collect the autumn. So once this 5 million go out, and we don't have enough reserve to operate the board. So I just like to, to make sure we had enough time to get this fee increase approved by the legislation.
Certainly, Member Chan, that is a very good point, and we will be looking to start the fee study next year. What you'll also notice in the fund condition balance is that, or the fund balance is that it does not represent the $1 million loan that is still outstanding. We've been repaid $4 million so far. So there is still $1 million that will be coming back that the legislature would like to see us utilize. And the timing of that loan being repaid and the fee study should coincide appropriately.
Mr. Bodea, to follow up on Mr. Chan's line of thought, correct me if I'm wrong, I think in our March meeting, it was explained that we were almost given direction from, I don't know if it was the governor's office or the legislature, to actually decrease our months in reserve so that, for the reasons that you just stated too, for the repayment, so that we can actually get that money back. Is that correct? Or can you just explain, because I think to, a third party hearing this, it does sound concerning, but from my understanding is we were almost directed to actually do what we're doing.
Correct. That is, they don't, they being the legislature and the governor's office, the state looking at a budget does not like to see a large reserve fund, and a number of boards actually have a statutory cap on how much they can have in reserves. We currently do not, and that is one of the reasons why the money was borrowed from the board. and the board's been operating without that money for over the last 5 years. So we do need to bring that down as we've been directed, not officially by the legislature, but ultimately the legislature doesn't want to take up a budget fee increase when we have such a high reserve.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, for my last update is our outreach effort. And I'd like to note that in March, I was invited to attend Medicine Day in San Francisco, and it was a celebration of associations and practitioners and all our stakeholders celebrating Medicine Day coming to the United States. I believe this was the 88th anniversary, and I was asked to provide a brief speech, and it was just very nice to meet all of our stakeholders as well as visiting members from other countries, including China, that were being introduced to various associations and hospitals in the U.S. as well. And it was a very wonderful evening meeting with all these stakeholders. Additionally, about 3 weeks ago, I attended Acupuncture Day at the Capitol, where Acupuncture Association was hosting services in the Capitol, and we had a number of legislators and government workers stopping by to receive and view treatments, and that was also a very successful event, and everyone seemed to really enjoy and appreciate the services that were being offered there. So it's very encouraging to see acupuncture reaching the Capitol like that and reaching out to the consumers and bringing the knowledge of that form of healing to the public. And those were the 2 events I participated in. Any questions from the members on that?
Thank you.
That is the end of my reports.
Let's move to agenda item
Comment?
17.
Public comment?
Public comment. Sorry, public
Okay.
comment.
Public comment on this? Seeing no? Okay, let's move to agenda item 17, enforcement. Ms. Christine Brothers, please.
Morning. So we looked back and we didn't report on this last fiscal year, which is almost over. So there's 3 quarters that have been completed to report on. For the first quarter of fiscal year 17-18, we received a total of 34 complaints, and 51 of those were closed or referred to investigation. The average intake time was 5 days. During that quarter, there were 50 investigations initiated, 139 pending at the close of the quarter, and 57 investigations closed with an average process time of 154 days. There was 1 disciplinary action that was requested, transmitted to the Attorney General's office for discipline, 14 cases pending with the Attorney General's office, 1 accusation or statement of issues filed, 5 decisions that became effective, resulting in 1 voluntary surrender and 4 probation. And those 5 decisions did get processed in an average time of 482 days. And there were 24 citations issued and 37 probation cases being monitored by staff. So in interest of time, since there's 3 quarters to cover, I won't cover all of the narrative, but I do want to highlight that the department's performance measure target of 540 days from complaint receipt to the effective date of the decision is 540 days. And we were well under that with 482 days, which is a vast difference from last year's quarter 1, which was 900 days. So that's a great improvement. For quarter 2, there were 79 complaints received, and all 79 were closed or referred to investigation, with an average intake time of 3 days.
Sorry, Ms. Brothers, can we just go back to the
Oh,
first
yeah,
quarter
did you
really
have a
quickly?
question?
Sorry. How, for the received and then the closed referred to investigation on page 1,
Yeah.
how do those numbers coincide? So if we receive, 34 complaints, for example, but we close or refer to investigation a higher number, 51.
Yeah.
Does that mean that we're initiating investigations for things that we haven't received, complaints that didn't necessarily come in, but we initiated, or?
No, it's complaints rolled over from the previous quarter.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a question
Yeah.
regarding to the last few years, the unprofessional misconduct the bar is really high. The first quarter, year 2018, 17 and 18 is high, and then the second quarter and third quarter and drop substantially, and also the criminal investigation and unlicensed and unregistered go up so much. Is it what's the problem, or what's the comparison, or something to do with the the criminal charge certainly in second quarter is so high, the misconduct and the unlicensed unregistered in the third quarter is so high. Why is that? I mean, in the last few years, is it always the unprofessional misconduct is the highest?
Highest, yeah.
Yeah, but now is it the shipping gear? And
Yeah.
I just like to know why.
I did look back. I recall the second quarter, it was the criminal charges convictions. That one's really high that quarter because that's capturing all of the incoming applications for the exam, and so when we review those applications and they've disclosed that they have criminal history, then that's the time that we are opening them. So we kind of get a large volume at certain points in the year. I think it's twice during the year, and that's capturing that. And then the third quarter, it just really truly was an increase in volume of unlicensed and unregistered complaints. I looked back and we just got a large volume of them that quarter. I would say maybe half of them were other licensees that were, some of them was like the dry needling issue. And I mean, it varied, but they were all truly consumer complaints coming in for unlicensed practice, yeah, or unregistered.
Another question: why the professional misconduct drop out? I remember we mentioned about we should use the proactive and use the school and the continuing education provider to make sure those efforts and this thing is reach out to the licensee. Is it because these things we mentioned, and then the continuing education and more licensee to wear what the effort and in their practice? That's why the trend is going down. Do you have this kind of feeling or something?
I haven't gotten any, read on that's been happening too much. I think it's just, it fluctuates. Generally, it's the highest volume just because basically every violation can be classified under unprofessional conduct. So, and when you look at the actual section in our act, it's 4955, there's like 10 different subsections of different acts that would constitute unprofessional conduct. So it's a really big catch-all. I'm not sure why it's gone down. I can't give you a really good explanation for that.
So if the licensee, they are aware this effort, then they will make this a professional misconduct that is going down. I think it's very important to reach out to the licensee. Mm-hmm. And for those this two new training for the unlicensed and the criminal, if we in the school or the education provider have more of this course to reach out the licensee, they are aware, so they will not commit it on this kind of mistake or criminals activity. So it's make the professionals more high standard and also protect the public.
Great.
Yeah. So I'm just followed Mr. Harabinding mentioned. Should we make some kind of a comment in this form here? Maybe just add, because it's kind of really have to explain why you received 34.
Right.
And then, so just make some comment because
Sure.
you have to explain. Maybe we just make like 2 asterisks here, do a
Okay.
1 statement.
I think that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also like to point out that with that increase in unlicensed and unregistered, as Christine mentioned, the public and the profession has been reporting on these, as we have asked in our previous discussions on dry needling or practicing out of scope, other professions trying to do needling. So we're grateful to the public for keeping that in mind and reporting that to us so that we can look into it.
Right. Now open for public?
Can open it. Draw 3.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay,
we need to
let's
go to the
do
second
that.
and third.
Yeah, that's good.
Even though we started asking questions about the second and third, we should go over the second and third.
Yeah, that's good.
Where did I leave off? Okay, so I think in the investigations of the second quarter, we initiated 78. There were 149 pending at the close of the quarter, 68 investigations closed, which resulted in average process time of 172 days. There were 3 disciplinary actions that we requested of the Attorney General's office with 11 cases pending. We did not file any accusations or statement of issues during that quarter. There were 4 decisions that became effective, all resulting in probation, and the average overall process time was 479 days. We issued 12 citations, and there were 38 probation cases that were being monitored. Again, just a great improvement with our overall process time being well under the 540 day target. And I will move to quarter 3. There were 45 complaints received, 43 were closed or referred to investigation, and the average intake time was 6 days. There were 43 investigations initiated, 134 pending, and 58 closed, and a process time in 240 days. There were 5 disciplinary actions requested, 14 cases pending with the Attorney General's office, 3 accusations or statement of issues filed, 1 decision that became effective resulting in probation, and that 1 decision did take 669 days. There were 4 citations issued and 40 probation cases now being monitored at the close of quarter 3. There was an increase in our investigation process time last year, this same quarter. It was the average time was 119 days, whereas this year it was 240 days, which is a large increase. But I looked back and there were some older cases that got closed out during the third quarter, so that kind of drove it up. So. And that completes the reports.
I would like to point out to the board members that you may have noticed an increase in the average intake time on the complaints, and this is not because our enforcement unit is slacking off, but they've been engaged in the business modernization process, and this is part of what we're going through right now to really find the right software solution and modernize our internal processes. So the enforcement processes are very detailed, and it requires a lot of their time. They're spending all day with our experts to map out all these processes. But even with that, they're still maintaining the under the 10-day requirement. So thank you, Christine, and to Cricket as well for juggling this workload.
Thank you. I just want to mention is, I know the number, there's 669 days on the average.
Yeah.
Do we know where the holding is, the office, AG office, or?
I didn't look at that one, but that one, it's difficult because it's just one case.
Right.
So you see that where some are really complex. Typically, it's the cases that took about a year with a formal investigation and division of investigation. And then we'll usually have to utilize an expert for review. And then it goes through the Attorney General's office and the process of either, this is likely a stipulation, but sometimes we'll go all the way up until the time of the hearing, and then it will get finally negotiated. So there's a lot of wait times and with the judicial process, yeah.
Thank you. So we have been bring the numbers down, way under the department performance measure,
Yeah.
So this is one case increase the number.
Did.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
So a couple questions, and thank you for the reports, very helpful. And to follow on the chair's question about process time, when, whether it's 400 days or 600 days, while we're investigating, while it's being processed, is their license temporarily revoked during that time? So, or are they continuing to actually see and treat patients?
For the most part, their license is still active and valid. However, if there's a case where it's really egregious, we're really concerned for public safety, there's different avenues that we can take. We can do an interim suspension order, and we can go in and have it be their license be suspended. But typically, you usually are close to the investigation being completed because you have to file an accusation and do the hearing process right away. But also, if it's a criminal act, we can go under Penal Code Section 23, and the Attorney General's office will represent us and go in and request that there be some sort of condition of bail or a suspension on their license.
Okay. And then there was some discussion about intake time and process time being affected by the sunset review, just generally. So can you just speak to that a little bit? And just because I think there were some really helpful comments from the public earlier about that.
Right.
How did that affect the enforcement division?
Yeah, it came around this. I had to remember, but yeah, it came around the close of the fiscal year. So there's a lot of reporting. Enforcement has to do bring up a lot of statistics for, I think, like the last 4 fiscal years. So there's a lot of reporting, and then there's lots of narrative questions to address. And Ben did a good job. We were all collaborating on the answers and everything. So it took a lot of time away from our normal duties. And then also at the close of the fiscal year, the department actually asked for annual reports. So that was going on all at the same time. So there's a lot that kind of, pulls us off. So we try to be very mindful of our timelines and processing things as quickly as possible, but we can't do it all if we're pulled off, especially with the sunset review. Yeah.
Well, I think that speaks to what we heard. I mean, there are real effects to sunset review, right?
There are,
and efficiency and for the board and staff to do their job. So I think it's helpful to hear that. And, relatedly, is the enforcement division, in terms of staffing, could some of the process time and the intake time be improved with more staff, in your opinion?
Definitely. Yeah. It's just Cricket and I, and we don't have support staff for a lot of the things, like opening complaints. A lot of other boards, they have a dedicated staff, and it's usually like a tech level, a lot of just data entry and things like that. So we're covering all of those different things and duties, and it would be helpful, to have more staff for sure. Yeah.
Well, I think it's pretty amazing that the two of you are handling all of this. I mean, I think, and that's not apparent from just reading it. So I think that it's helpful to hear that, and I think as a board we should be doing everything we can to help staff get more help, and because to me this is really, in terms of protecting the public, this is really critical. This is really, in some ways, education and the enforcement go together, but this is critical to be as fully staffed as we can and to get more resources. So, well done on everything, and going forward, hopefully we can bring in more help and more resources. So,
thank you.
We will focus on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members?
Public comments? Yes.
Jacques Marmarco, Academic Dean, Empress College. First of all, thank you for all your good work. And Ben also looking into this dry needling situation, which is getting more and more concerning by the month, because now the dry needling has moved to a different phase in the whole so-called dry needling scene. It's become homeostatic dry needling. So they have gone away from actually using the dry needling on local area to basically doing acupuncture by covering it up under the term homeostatic dry needling. So they're doing distal points. Basically, they have hijacked our profession, and that has happened throughout the country, except for here in California. We're the last bastion. We're the last fort standing. So we need to protect our profession, and I believe that we need to do some action with our board. I don't know the investigation for, let's say, if it's a physical therapist or a chiro, are you then putting pressure on their board to do something about their licensing? Because you cannot revoke anything, any aspect of their license, or put them on probation. So what is happening between your board and I know there's no answer on it right now. It's a public comments phase, but I think we need to work together with both the physical therapy board and the chiropractic board in order to have some consequences, because as we know statistically throughout the country, the majority of pneumothoraxes are done by non-acupuncturists, meaning physical therapists and chiros doing acupuncture with as low as 27 hours training, which is not even really hands-on training on the dry needling. So this is really a very serious situation, especially in the state of California for our profession. And with this new phase of homeostatic dry needling, they really have hijacked the whole acupuncture, and they're actually even laughing at our face saying, don't tell anybody, but this is acupuncture. And we have had people that have attended those courses and have mentioned that. These are out-of-state courses, but these individuals are obviously doing acupuncture here, and as mentioned in your report. So I hope that our board does investigate and also puts pressure on the other two boards, if it is the physical therapies and chiropractic board, to see if there are some consequences for this illegal action and dangerous action. And at the end of the day, if there's a pneumothorax, they say, well, it was an acupuncture needle that did it. No, it wasn't an acupuncture needle. It was somebody using the acupuncture needle, which they don't even use the term acupuncture, and hijacking it as dry needling. So thank you for all your work, and Ben specifically for following up on this whole dry needling situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michael Fox again. Dry needling is a serious concern with licensed acupuncturists and with the public. There are at least three things that we would like to see. I am aware, and I inform my members, that when there is an accusation or a rumor or a Facebook rant about dry needling done by a physical therapist in California, I tell everybody all of those complaints should go directly to the Physical Therapy Board. I believe that is correct. Currently, it's my understanding that athletic trainers are coming to the state being certified in dry needling in other states and other areas. There is no board of athletic trainers currently, as to my understanding. And those, I've been told by people that because there's a legal loophole, that they're able to do this dry needling or acupuncture, as we're going to call it, in the state of California, unmolested, if you will. And so I've been encouraging our members and our Facebook ranters and complainers and concerned citizens to send those complaints to the acupuncture board, because there is no other board to complain to. It is an unregulated practice of acupuncture. When those complaints go to other boards, such as the physical therapy board or the chiropractic board, we seem to lose track of what's happening. We have no feedback of where it is in the process, if it's one of those 669-day cases or if it's a 4-day cases. And so we still have people who are very concerned about this, and they're being brushed off by these other boards with little updates, if you will. So I would like to see, when we refer to the other boards, that we get some feedback on where that is in the process, whether it's gone to this DOJ or this other board, or whether it's been dismissed. We have people just getting upset about a lot of different things, and dry needling is really disturbing not only our licensees and our schools and our stakeholders, but it's dangerous to the public when it's done with little or no education. And athletic trainers are coming into the state with certifications, expecting that because they can do this in other states, they can also do that here. So I'd like some possibility of feedback through the Acupuncture Board for these things that get dispersed into other arenas. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean, please.
Dr. Yongping Chen again. I just once agree to Emperor's College's position and Dr. Michael Fox's position. Dry needling is acupuncture. It is acupuncture, but the physical therapist and stated it is dry needling. So I don't talk to detail. We have a lot of articles and a lot of research. So my position is we very concerned about the dry needling come to California because now I joined the National Against Unlawful Practice Acupuncture or Dry Needling Federation. So we know now in New Mexico, it's not a state law. The lawsuit already to the federal level. So if this go to federal level, and if dry needling approved to be legally practiced, then it will come to California. I assume the federal law apply to state law as that level. So in California, we have almost half of the acupuncturists here, and we have to unite it. And it's not the number one is protect the profession. If physical therapists, they come to acupuncture school, they have 3,000 hours or at least like the MD training or a proper training. Probably we said, okay, you are more qualified to have more credential to do acupuncture. And if they only have 27 hours, 50 hours, so anybody can, not a physical therapy, any massage therapist, and just public can have 27 hours. And they can okay, I only do 1 point, dry needling for 1 point and not to the organ. So everybody can do it. Then we do the acupuncture profession does not exist. So that's my position. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Morning.
Morning.
And there's an extended discussion from the dry needling, not only the issue that other people already mentioned. And you know, New Jersey, their state passed physical therapists can use dry needle. In the argument, the acupuncture profession representative explained to the chair in the committee, explained the qualification of himself. But the board said, in New Jersey, you only require 760 hours to do acupuncture. And that number cannot persuade the board chair to support on acupuncture side. From this case, it also extends another meaning. If the country, we do not have a standard like California. In California, we defeat nurse, we defeat physical therapy, we defeat chiropractor before they try to use acupuncture under their practice. We defeat because we have high standard. And New Jersey lose it because their training program is too low. So this gives us a very good lesson. Not only California will keep the high standard to protect the public, also we will urge out of state, they will use as California standard as their own practice to protect the whole profession. And I don't believe the federal law will be on top of the state law. Like marijuana in federal is illegal, California is legal. So I don't believe that. But that will become a long way to fight if we do not have a high standard to keep for the profession. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Ann York Lee.
Thank you. Any other public comments? No? Seeing no? Hearing no? Okay, let's move to item number 18, Education Report. Mr. J. Hurd, please.
Good morning, board members and the public in attendance. So for acupuncture training program, there are currently 34 acupuncture training programs as defined by Business and Profession Code, BPC section 4927.5A. And 23 of those programs are in full compliance. 2 programs have completed clinical corrective actions and have had their curriculum reviewed and are in the process of processing their corrective actions. And then there's 1 program that is currently under curriculum review by staff. 7 training programs have submitted clinical corrective actions and are pending staff review of their curriculum. All the remaining programs requiring board staff curriculum compliance reviews are out-of-state programs, which were the last site visits and clinical visits completed by board staff and a board-approved subject matter expert. No training programs have lost board approval status since the last education report. So new applications for board approval of curriculum as required by Senate Bill 1246 and the May 24th, 2017 implementation of the California Code of Regulations, CCR section 1399-434, the board now focuses on applications for curriculum approval, which includes periodic monitoring of the BPC 4927.5 requirements. This is accomplished by effective communication with both the Bureau of Post-Secondary Private Education, BPPE, and the Accreditation Commission for Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine, Aecom. To be recognized as an approved training program, an acupuncture training program must maintain 3 requirements described in BPC section 4927.5. The consequence of the loss of any of these requirements is the inability of program to qualify applicants for the California Acupuncture Licensing Exam. Presently, the board has completed a total of 12 applications for board approval of curriculum within the mandated 30-day statutory reporting requirement during the 2017 and 2018 fiscal year. Programs have averaged 3 application submissions to reach full compliance. Following 3 new programs have received curriculum approval after demonstrating full compliance with the board's requirement. The College of Eastern Medicine at Southern California, University of Health Sciences, the ACM program have both had their curriculum approved and met the standards of to be recognized as an approved training program. The University of Herbal Medicine in Hayward, California, their MSTCM, Masters of Science in Traditional Chinese Medicine program, also has achieved curriculum approval and has met the requirements to be recognized as an approved training program. And then finally, the University of Bridgeport Acupuncture Institute in Bridgeport, Connecticut, their Doctor of Traditional Chinese Medicine program has also reached curriculum approval and the ability to be the other 2 approvals necessary to be recognized as an approved training program. So that's the end of my school report. Continuing education and continuing education audit update. The continuing education unit has resumed the fiscal year 15-16 continuing education audit process, starting with the month ending July 31st, 2015. To date, 6 months of the CE audit letters have been processed with December 31st, 2015 as the final month in fiscal year 2015. Board staff are randomly selecting 10% of the renewing populations of license every month. Board staff are resuming the selection process where it left off in 2015. In the interest of managing workload, board staff are selecting 2 months' worth of audits every month moving forward until the backlog is addressed. Once current CE audit process will be conducted on a monthly basis. And that process right now is going very smoothly. We've had a few cycles and it's doing very well. So in continuing education, for applications for courses offered for continuing education in fiscal year 17-18, the board processed 3,196 applications for course approvals. And then the current number of continuing education providers that are current and valid is 548. And then lastly, in this section of the report, acupuncture tutorials. Currently, there are 43 acupuncture tutorials in progress. 11 tutorials were completed during the fiscal year 17-18. Exam results for the August 2017 and April 2018 test dates for tutorial training program students are as followed. There were 8 students overall, and they were all first-time test takers, tutorial students who took the test, and of those 8, 3 passed the exam. Moving on to a new part of the report, and this is going to be a mouthful, so I'm going to pause at some point, and I'll probably even stumble here and there because there's a lot of information in here, so we'll allow board members to weigh in along the way. So the sunset review recommendation dash education statutes and regulations. Board staff have identified issues to be considered by the board pertaining to changes and the impact of the language of business and profession codes 4927.5 resulting from the language in SB 1246. Additionally, regulations contained in Article 3.5 Acupuncture Training Program that have had statutory authority based in BPC 4927.5 have been impacted by the implementation of this statute. The following items have been identified in the board's 2017 Sunset Report and the board's responses to the 2018 background paper as possible ways to address gaps that have formed in the board's ability to protect the public and regulate the practice of acupuncture. So, clarifying statutory text of BPC 4927-3B to be consistent with current terminology used by the Accreditation Commission for Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. This particular item has been addressed in the board Sunrise Bill AB 3142 by the legislature. So that's been completed. Staff has observed confusion on the part of new training programs about the process necessary to complete BPC 4927.5.3c. And I'm just going to stop here and talk about the confusion. The confusion is twofold. One is programs are confused when they're able to start training students in the training clinic and when that would be allowed for them to practice acupuncture. And the second confusion is when they are recognized as an approved training program that would qualify students for the licensing exam. So continuing on with the sentence. And the absence of the requirement of this statute to include a completed site visit by Aecom for programs pursuing initial accreditation. Staff recommendation is that the standard necessary to meet BPC section 4927.5.3c be set at a later point in the existing, with no change to their process, existing Aecom accreditation process to include a completed site visit by Aecom. The Aecom accreditation process consists of 3 stages: qualifying, accreditation, pre-accreditation, and accreditation. Pre-accreditation and accreditation satisfy the 2 possible statutes for approval under BPC 4927.5.3a and b. However, this is the tongue twister part. However, BPC 4927.3c is a status within the first stages of Aecom accreditation, which we will refer to as a qualifying stage. It's broken down into the following steps. Okay, the first step for a school is they submit an initial, looking for approval, submit an initial inquiry to the Aecom office. Second step is they pay required fees and expenses and host a 1-day orientation visit. I mean, between the submission of the initial inquiry and the completion of an orientation visit can be up to 6 months or longer. Step 3 is that they submit a letter of intent officially notifying the commission of the institution's commitment to pursue accreditation. So this is currently the statutory requirement for BPC section 4927.53C, which is a very minimum level of interaction with Aecom. Step 4 is they attend or complete a self-study report pre-accreditation training. Step 5 is they complete and submit a self-study report pre-accreditation and the required self-study report fee. Step 6 is they pay for and host a site visit. So this is a staff recommendation for the point to be set for meeting BPC section 4927.3C, which means that the programs have had an outside accreditation do an official site visit of their program and their clinic. Timing between the program submission of a self-study report and the site visit is dependent on the institution and Aecom staff ability. This step can take as long as 3 years, and also it can be longer if there are any appeals to the commission initial determinations. Step 7 is they submit a formal institutional response to the site visit report pre-accreditation. In step 8, they undergo commission review, the Accreditation Commission review. The commission review determines if the program can attain pre-accreditation status, which is BPC 4927.5A3B. And at the time the time between step 1 and receiving pre-accreditation status can last up to 3 years. Once a program has attained pre-accreditation, it has 3 years to attain full accreditation status. It is important to note, this is a very important point, that the institutions in the qualifying stage are not subject to Aecom oversight. Okay?
Thank you. Can I stop you there and just?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank
that
you.
was my resting point.
Yeah. It's there's a lot there, so thank you. The first question I have is for the 34 approved acupuncture training programs that we identified at the beginning, and then the 23 that are in full compliance. Are they fully accredited programs?
All those programs have Aecom accreditation. They also had prior board approval of curriculum, but is in preparation for the implementation of SB 1246, the board initiated a process of looking at all the schools' curriculum based on that. And so it's moving forward, all these programs will be compliant moving forward. And when they make a change, they'll only have to relate to the changes in their curriculum. They won't have to they won't have to go through a whole new approval process. So.
Got it. And so how many, roughly, how many programs are in the qualifying stage and how many are in the pre-accreditation stage at this point?
Well, none of them right now.
Okay.
Right now, because all our new programs have actually, all the applications we've had for curriculum approval that are in California have met the basic needs of Aecom, BPPE, and had their curriculum approved. So right now, we're good.
Okay. So I guess the confusion that you identified, the two things, when they're able to start training, and then secondly, when they're actually qualified to have students go to the exam. I think those were the 2 points of confusion, right? So what is confusing about, why is it confusing? Is it because they should be able to do that in their thinking before full accreditation, but it's not clear?
Well, one of the initial one is, when was the letter of intent to be accepted? So we did have one program that had begun operating with just, the initial letter, just the inquiry letter without doing their orientation visit. So they weren't even meeting step 3. And the board doesn't have any process in that, so we don't, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't learn that until they put their application for board approval of curriculum, which came actually after that point. Another program during the process of their approval and bringing on a new program had missed getting the board's approval of curriculum and had been operating. And so there was really a number of those students and their clinic supervisors were at risk of being, either disciplined or unlicensed practice, right? Unprofessional conduct, unlicensed practice. So those, the real thing, the confusion is if you read the statute 4927.5 as it is, it's not particularly clear, right?
No.
So that's sort of one of the pieces.
So I guess the last question, are there any, it doesn't seem like there are any schools or programs that are caught in the crosshairs right now.
Right now, they've all been resolved.
Got it.
without,
Well, that's
with,
helpful.
it hasn't been without a bit of sweat here
Sure.
and there.
Okay.
And a few tears.
To clarify, those confusing items are for schools that are now looking for approval, not previous ones that have been approved by us.
And those schools wouldn't be necessarily, I mean, those schools wouldn't be training, they wouldn't have, well, I don't know. I mean, do they have students, those schools, and are they training folks, and are they?
New programs that
Yeah.
are coming in there.
Yeah.
There is a possibility, because what they'll typically do is they'll get BPP approval and then they'll start working, right?
Oh.
And they could legally be able to do a training clinic with a licensee as long as the students were just in the observation phase. But the minute the student starts treating patients, they've moved into needing board approval. And it basically, that creates a safe harbor for those students to practice what they're learning, right? So
They need board approval and accreditation, is that correct? Or could they?
they need board approval of curriculum. They need standing with one of those BPC A, B, or C with Aecom, and they need approval to operate from the Bureau.
Got it.
There'll be more on that in the next, we're going to move on to the next piece.
So I just want to have a clarified question here, because here it said the timing, let's see, the page 5, the timing between the program submission of a self-study report and the site visit is dependent on the institutions and the Aecom's staff availability. This step can be taken as long as 3 years
Yes.
or even longer. So if it's a new program, coming in, that means could it be up to 3 years? The school is a clinic treating patients.
It could be, yes, for sure, because of the low threshold of meeting that first stage. Now, ideally, what would happen is, because they could do those student observation areas, it might give a program 2 years to get up and running from that place. But it's actually, the way this is operating, it's making schools to be more together when they start. And I mean, historically at California, there was a low threshold to kind of get to that start point, in terms of what they were required to do. But it also was always under board, review, right? So now with these different processes, the school's dealing with all these 3 different agencies, right? And the board's role has changed, and so, I mean, we're implementing a new program, basically.
And the board doesn't have to take action or make a determination on this right now. These were brought just as recommendations to see if the board would like to refer this back for another agenda item in the future, or to refer it to committee, which is to the president's discretion.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, these are staff's observation. There's no weight on, I mean, it's up to the board to determine the stakeholders the way in which way that we would go. We're just identifying what we're seeing.
So, our goal is protect the public. This is a paramount for the board. And I think maybe the education committee, can start looking into it and work on that. Would that be okay?
So noted.
I'll continue. So statute provides that meeting the 3 approvals required of BPC 4927.5 constitutes the requirement of becoming an approved educational and training program. Currently, there is no authority to assign to one agency to verify all 3 approvals required of program to have their students to be eligible for the licensing examination. With the 3 approvals, an approved training program can now allow enrolled students to engage in the pre-licensure practice of acupuncture with required supervision. This is what we were just speaking about. However, this creates the possibility of approvals as described in BPC begin operating prior to completing all the necessary approvals as described in BPC section 49275. Since the January 1st, 2017 implementation of BPC section 4925, board staff has observed program that had been operating in this manner, which we discussed. This highlights the need for appropriate oversight necessary to meet the board's mandate for public protection. Staff has recommended that the board consider working with the legislature to amend the statute to give the board the authority to verify that acupuncture training programs have met all the 3 requirements currently outlined in BPC section 4927.5. Once this verification has been completed, training programs would be officially recognized by the board as board-approved training programs.
Question there. Yeah. So the 3 approval requirements are what? What are the three different ones?
So we just outlined that. The first one is board approval of curriculum, right, which we have outlined in CCR 139434. Mm-hmm. The second is the approval to operate by the Bureau of Post-Secondary Private Education. And then, did I say that right? I might have reversed one of those words. And then the third one is the appropriate relationship with Aecom. We would like it to be closer to pre-accreditation. Right now, it's a very low threshold with Aecom.
But within Aecom's accreditation process, there's 3 states that would qualify you for Aecom's.
Right.
It's not like, whereas with the board, there's 1, your curriculum is approved. With BPPE, it's 1, your institution's approved. With Aecom, there's 3 different stages you can have that qualify you. But the ultimate challenge here is that no one organization is responsible for finally declaring this school is approved. So the board has to do this background work to identify these schools, and then we post it on our website, but these technically, it's not mandated. You know, like the school, we're putting this out for the students to be aware of and for the schools to be notified, but we have no authority over that.
You know, in this situation, if there's some lapse of that, the 2 people that are going to get injured are the students and the public, right? So,
yeah, that's
or the clinic supervisor.
Or the clinic supervisor. Yeah.
The schools have no accountability for any violations of that fund.
School ownership. Yeah.
School owners. Mm-hmm.
So on the second approval requirement, the approval to operate the post-secondary education piece, who gives that approval?
It's the Bureau. It's a Department of Consumer Affairs Bureau, and they have authority over private education at the college level throughout the state.
Post-secondary.
Yeah, post-secondary.
Public and private.
I can see why there's confusion. I mean, it's extremely confusing just to.
Glad you captured that. I mean, I've worked really closely with Aecom, and even just our part is enough to get through to understanding what we're doing. But then even talking with Aecom, there's definitely been some clarity in working together and their, you know, role with California and clarifying their process. Mm-hmm. And they're much more nimble than we are. They can actually have a commission meeting, change things like that. We really are slow, right? We're more like a barge, so.
Well, and I guess
we carry a lot,
you know, and I guess
that's it. Good, thank you.
What is so in these 3 approval? I mean, do they have to come? 3 requirements. They're not necessarily linear in time. Like, could you get one without? You obviously need to get that first stage of being able from Aecom being able to operate. I assume that comes first.
Well, the bureau is.
What's
they
that?
do need the BPPE approval to just start their school because it's they can't even start operating without that, right?
Okay.
So that's the first one they can do. And to answer your question, they don't all have to be completed at once. They can be coming along at different stages. For the board, the key issue is where it moves from education into the practice of acupuncture, and that's where there's an exposure of, you know,
public harm.
Yeah, you know, of the public harm, but it's also the clinic supervisor or the student being kind of caught in those crosshairs. You know, and often they might not even know that that's happening. You know, the students walk into the schools and they feel like they're being well taken care of, which generally we think they are, right? But in these newer programs, it's a different, they're beginning, right? So.
And who is, of the 3 agencies, the board, Aecom, the Bureau, who's making sure that this is all working properly?
The way that this is worked, it's an automatic process that nobody supervises. So when you have all 3, all the lights light up.
Right.
So that's exactly the recommendation is like, we would like the board to be able to put that together and officially give that statement, notice the school that they're officially approved, and that would be the end of it. Because, and again, it comes down to that clinical part, not so much the education part, but it actually comes down to when they're actually doing the training, working on patients in their student clinics.
Basically, like up to 3 years, you know, there's a. Okay.
Again, our currently approved programs, we're very happy with the way they're operating their clinics. We've seen them all and we know them all, and so this is really for new programs moving into it.
Another side, in other words, then in order to get this free program and get approval, so now it looks like 3 different entities work in different way.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's
that's a good summary.
One on the top to oversight, you know, and get proof, because this entity maybe take 1 year, and this entity to get proof maybe take another year, and then in the middle, and something happened and just break down.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think the board should be, no, I mean, talk to the committee, I mean, the education committee should be come up something to talk to legislation, to have somebody to oversight this free approval in free entity, to make speed up that. Because right now is that anything happen in between, nobody knows. Okay? Just stop over there. Until
It's up to
somebody
the
complaining,
committee to
then you
work
can
on it.
continue to
Okay.
work.
Well, and it has been mentioned, like, we're kind of stuck holding the bag because students are going to approach us for their licensing exam, or we're going to get a complaint along that line that we're going to have to ramp up all our, investigation in. And what's going to end up is we're going to get, like, let's say a school is operating improperly, it's going to be their clinic supervisor and their student who may not even know that they were in that situation that's going to be left holding the bag, right? So right now, there's no accountability for school administration in terms of what happens clinically, but they're operating those clinics, so. But so we need to verify that is the real piece. Whether we have the authority or not, the lights go on or whatever, because we have the licensing exam, we have to know when that's there, right? So in a funny way, we're doing that gratis or without authority.
So then this will be the education committee work? Okay, so
It
should
would be
we,
nice to see some education. Yeah.
right, we need an enforcement committee to get over this point?
Not at this point. I think.
Okay, so education committee. Okay, thank you, thank you.
This up.
We'll get into it. Okay, so moving on to another section of the regulatory focus. To further support the full enactment of BPC Section 4927.5, the board is aware of the need for changes to the regulations in Title 16 CCR sections 1399.435 and then sections 1399.438 through 1399.439 that address the program's required documentation, enforcement, and monitoring. So there are a number of items here that the board could potentially eliminate that are currently being adequately monitored both by the Bureau of Post-Private Secondary Education and the Accreditation Commission for Acupuncture and Oral Medicine. And so those are already covered, so the board could let some of that go. There's also a need to revise or promulgate regulations to address training program accountability to enforcement actions to include training program ownership. So we've already discussed that. Under current law, the jurisdiction for training program enforcement of the practice of acupuncture falls on the clinic supervisors as licensees and students as unlicensed practice. We did kind of discuss that. Is there any further questions on that particular section? Okay. And so then finally, in the sunset report and background paper responses, the board communicated that it will keep the committees updated on the discussion on seeking a statutory authority to charge curriculum reviews fees. So when this changed, one of the things that happened is the board lost its ability to charge for curriculum reviews, but was also asked to perform those reviews in 30 days. So a curriculum review takes approximately 40 hours of staff time to complete, and then subsequent applications, if not compliant on the first submissions, may take less time depending on the number of non-compliances found. In 2017 and 18 fiscal year, the board reviewed 12 new applications for board approval of curriculum. This cost now is borne by the licensees and there's no longer any cost associated to training programs for this review. And review process of the board application for approval of curriculum. So, I mean, basically we would like to get some fees for that work. That's a staff recommendation.
To properly allocate the cost to the applicant and not to the licensees.
I think this is an issue was brought up in the sunset review.
Yeah, it was one of the
to look
responses.
at, yes. So this could be the committee work also, look
And-
at.
And if we go back over the past, when the board would do a site visit, the schools wouldn't have to pay anything for the staff time. The only thing they would pay for the site visit would be for the accommodations of the SMEs and the staff for their travel. But the fee originally before was a $1,500 fee, and that was mostly the board focused on the curriculum review, right? So that hasn't really, asking for a fee for that. The board's work had always really been a lot on the, we were collecting for that initial staff evaluation, so.
And originally, the board had statutory authority to charge up to $3,000, but for every application. However, the board in regulation, when it was initially given that authority, only set it up to 1,500. So the legislature did give the board a good amount of leeway. So just an example of prices that were historically given to us.
So we got double.
So that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Other questions?
From board members?
No.
No? No. It's open to the public. Public comments.
Jacques Mormarco, Academic Dean, Empress College. First of all, Educational Committee, Jay, good work on that. I know it took a lot of work, and it's amazing the amount of progress this board has made with the Educational Committee over the years. So thank you, Ben, for being in charge of that also. A question that comes up from what you mentioned at the early phases of your report, the continuing education situation. 3,000 applications. We're not talking 30, 300, 3,000 applications to do this continuing education, 500 educators. That is staggering amount of applicants that you have to go through. And it brings back to the original condition that I talked about, and hopefully we'll put it on the agenda once that comes up. This continuing education is very, very important, as some of you are aware. At the end of the day, acupuncture, it's a hands-on skill. People have to keep up their hands-on component. And this online and live online and this gray area that has not been clarified over the years, I think it is time for us to really clarify it. Empress College has been providing this continuing education since the early days that the state required. Prior to a certain date, there was no requirement. Like in the late 70s, early 80s, there was no continuing education requirement. So I do not know exactly the date, but sometimes around that time it was implemented, and we had those 50 hours that were hands-on 50 hours. Certainly you could do some herb classes over the internet, but when it gets to hands-on components such as needling or tuina, shiatsu, ama, all these, auricular therapy, Korean hand therapy, master dung therapy, you need to have the hands-on component. And people that are running some of these classes, it's live online, meaning the people are live in their living room and there's only one or two people that are actually physically present. And I don't think that's correct. So I hope that we can see that. Empress College, we try to have top educators give those classes under the umbrella of our provider number 49, not number 1100 or 1200 like some of the new ones are coming in. But what has impacted our continuing education program to a point where we might say we're just not going to do it anymore, because we cannot have a top professor come and try and spend the whole day with one or two people, because everybody's like online and not wanting to drive to whatever location they are driving from to have this hands-on component. So I think we really need to look at our profession, and we need to look at the technology. Certainly technology has a good place in this day and age. I'm not denying that. However, we cannot forget the hands-on component, and the more training, the more safety for your consumer, your patient, and for our reputation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Yorkley, regarding the continuing education, I understand there are near 1,000 providers as a continuing educator. So my suggestion to the board is to increase the provider fee. Right now the fee is too low. Any individual person can pay like 250 150 to become a provider. And once they become a provider, it put a lot of obligation on the board to supervise. Okay, so my one suggestion is increase the fee to make the criteria either higher, make it less people can afford to do it, and board has to decide how much to charge. But I think 150 is too low. The second thing I want to share with the board is on June 25, AB 3142 regarding the acupuncture board. And this bill has passed the assembly floor and go to the Senate floor. So everyone expect it will be no problem. But we have 1 student and 6 professional people and as a witness to support the bill. And before the hearing, I have the chance to talk with the staff on the lobby, in the lobby. I asked, each health profession has 4 years to review, and we are the only one to be reviewed every 2 years. I think the board has good performance. Also, the staff believes so. I think I urge the EO to work on the remaining recommendation in the sunset review report, because from the legislative viewpoint, they think the performance is good. Yeah, but just clarify some barrier and work a little bit more to make it 4 years in the next 2 years. I think the board has a very good chance from the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question. No, I'm not.
We can't ask questions right now.
Yoon Kim, Empress College. I have comments on 2 of the issues in the report. The first, the continuing education. I know that the board has talked about increasing the fee for providers. Empress College is one of several institutions in California that offers the postgraduate DOM program. So these are all licensed acupuncturists coming back for additional training, specialty training in acupuncture. And we make a number of those courses in the doctorate program as continuing education credits, so that these continuing students can also get continuing education in California. So we don't make any revenue, obviously. The courses are not offered to any other students apart from the doctorate students. And so increasing the fee would be a burden on Empress College and other AOM schools that offer the postgraduate doctorate program and give continuing education credits. And so I would like to ask the board to consider these schools that providing a service to our doctorate students. Second, I want to give you a little more information about Aecom and the accreditation process because we've gone through the process and the site visit for a number of years. And so first, there are 3 phases, as Jay mentioned. So there's the approval process, which means that you are authorized by Aecom to just approve the program. Doesn't mean that you meet any of the standards, really. It's a very low bar. And you need to provide disclosure to the public saying that it doesn't indicate any status with Aecom. The pre-accreditation process means that you have met the accreditation standards substantially. And this allows you to be eligible for federal financial aid. So you're really meeting a very, very high bar at that point. And then the full accreditation subsequently. So this process takes 7 to 10 years. It's a very, very rigorous process. And I really commend the board for requiring all CAB-approved curriculum to have met the bar of pre-accreditation. So that's a very positive step for our profession here in California. And yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Michael Fox. I thank you, Jay, for your report. I came up with really one question, and that is, how do we protect these students of these new programs and these clinical directors working in this wild west of sort of approved, kind of in the middle of things? These people are, I believe, at a great deal of risk, and these students are a member of public. And they're investing a lot of money and time, and certainly could be at risk for prosecution in some cases. So is there a way to collect this information or bring this forward so that, for example, when I was teaching I was asked to get a duplicate copy of my license for display at my clinic. Is there a way to say, are you teaching students? And that would alert the board, for example, that maybe there's a new class going on that you haven't been aware of. I don't know this process as well as my educator colleagues, but I can tell you, when I was a 20-something chemical engineering student, it would never have occurred to me to check with the Board of Engineering whether or not some box had been checked off and the state had approved or accredited them. And I can pretty much assure you that none of the students in current programs are doing that either. So is there a way to alert students or inform students that this is a new program, it's not quite available yet for all of the accreditation processes? I really think that our board and our state needs to protect those clinical supervisors who are offering education services, as well as students who are believing that they're getting good education and then finding out at the last minute that they're not even eligible perhaps to take the exam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yoon Kim, Empress College. I just want to add one more comment about the Aecom site visit process. Empress College just went through our reaccreditation site visit, and the site visit team asked to provide documentation that we were meeting all CAB curriculum requirements, and they also asked for information about BPP approval and that we were doing proper disclosure required by BPP. So Aecom has started that. Aecom has started to enforce state-specific regulations, and so they're paying special attention to California schools because there's so many schools in California. So Aecom is checking that in California.
Thank you.
Yunping Chair again. So our association have once a year international conference, and we have once a month continuing education at Hilton Hotel, and we have very formal education. We try to invite all the top professor, expert to come. So so I think our continuing education is doing very well. But meanwhile, we know we have a lot of people. I think Annual Police Association and my association, we are the largest in Southern California as an association. And so we know so many providers, and I don't know how other providers you check their quality of education. And I think continuing education is very critical for keep this profession high quality to give the consumer best service. And also we think right now we have the CalAtma try to unify the whole California's acupuncturists to have one association and really emphasize the quality. And we just passed the vision called the Vision 2028 in 10 years. So this is officially passed in the steering committee for the Unified Association. So in 2028, the California's acupuncturist profession should be all doctor level education and doctor level entrance to the profession. So I talked to a lot of school like Five Branch, the AMU, a lot of school, they said that they already have like 50, 70% the program is doctor program, and the AMU said in the future they only want to have the doctor degree education. And so some school principals said this expect in 5 years. So we put the vision in 10 years. We hope the profession will be doctor degree profession. And then look at the other profession, physical therapy, chiropractor, and other naturopaths. Compare with them, actually, acupuncture, especially in battling opioid crisis for pain management, acupuncture really plays a key role. for the society. And we hope that before the doctoral education as entry level of the profession, we hope we really will have the best quality of continuing education. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing no, hearing no.
Yeah, follow up the online and how the online provider to put on the online, how the to the board or the has some way to check those people as online to listen to this CE provider. And looks like, see, in my society, we had an online. Online is so popular right now. So every 10 minutes, we have to answer. The screen had the indication you had to answer. If during the whole program, you miss 25%, you cannot get a credit. So I was just wondering, do the acupuncture online course had this kind of safeguard to make sure that people are, listen to this provider to make some lecturing or just put in the computer, go to sleep?
There's a number of standards, but we can bring this back to the Education Committee if the board so desires, or to the full board.
Education Committee is fine, yeah. I'm interested to know.
You're pretty busy now.
Because the online right now is so popular, everybody's go online. Even the live seminar is reduced substantially, substantial. So, if you don't have way to safeguard the people, make sure the people as a lesson, and then the online is no use because you cannot check them.
So we will assign.
Yeah, 1 second. What was that, President?
I said we will assign to the Education Committee to look into it.
Agreed.
Okay. Okay.
30 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
30 seconds.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Kitman Chan. Yes, online it is very popular, and there are training, like if you do Title IX training or FERPA, they have questions that come up, and those are very sophisticated programs. However, the one thing that is really important in our profession is the hands-on component. Certainly, if you're doing a compliance training, or if you're doing sexual harassment training, the online would work just fine because of the scenario. But if you have to have a hands-on component, it's not going to work. The people have to have the hands-on component. So that's just my point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Maybe after this.
Okay. All right.
I'm fine.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
yeah.
So let's just move to, thank you, Jay Hurd, and thank you, everyone. So let's move to item number 19, the examination report from Tammy Stanley. Oh, you're going to do it?
I'll go ahead and start, just because I've always introduced the examination statistics. These are just the reports from the last exam with our total pass rates, and we've broken it down by the school, as well as by first-time test takers versus retest takers and overall, and then again by language as well for first-time takers, retest takers, and overall. And are there any questions from the board on these statistics? Again, what we do see, what we have been seeing, is that first-time test takers have a relatively high pass rate in the 70s to 80s sometimes even, occasionally dipping into the high 60s, but usually it hovers around the 70s. Retest takers tend to bring the overall average down, with their pass rate being much lower. And I would like to, if there's no questions from the board on those matters.
I have a question.
Please.
I mean, just like you say, the lead takers always, the percentage passing rate is so low. We've been discussed so many times. And how to improve the lead taker to make sure pass rate is going up. And those pass rate in the lead takers have always been a 25 to 30%. And it's never go up to 30% or more. So, we've been talking about why this litigator to continue to taking a exam, some is at 20, more than 20 times. Do we have the board we discuss how many times those failure, and we should let them stop for 1 or 2 years and let them take it again, because like this memo saying, if you fail on the online exam, you have to wait 6 months to taking the online exam again. So do we, the boss, do we have some kind of guideline to let those litigants to understand, and they should make more effort to participate in the examination, and also, just like I mentioned, to the school. The school, even though the school is provide free for those litigants, but the problem is that do the litigant need some particular area to improve? If they every time they fail the exam, go back to school and study the whole thing, but they don't know what is the weakness, and they don't improve and go back to the taking another exam, you still fail again, because the strength they have, but the weakness they don't understand. So the school, if the school can help them to identify those weaknesses, this area, and they pay more attention and study hard on this weak area, so the next time they will pass the exam, the rate should be higher. That's why I like to see either we had some kind of limitation on the litigator, or we should talk to the school, and then the school come up something to make sure the litigator understand why they fail in certain area, and then can school do something about it. But that's not just offer. You come back to study free. You come back to study free. So I fail. I come back to the school, and I'm doing the same thing. And the next time, I don't know what should I improve. I just go back to school to just take the odd course again, and nobody tell me the witness point. I'm here. I fail on where. So I think the school probably has, put some effort to see how do they come up program to identify each second the litigator's witness area. Can school to make sure they had more time in that particular area and in general? That's one of my comment.
We have discussed limiting the number of times to an applicant can take the exam. The board has not made any formal decision on that, but this is an excellent item for the exam committee to take up. And discussion on remedial programs after failing exam has also been discussed, but that's a bit more challenging as we're putting more requirements now in the schools, where this is the applicant's responsibility to know this information. So testing limits, test time limits would be something we can discuss.
And also just to follow Mr. Chan's talk regarding the retakers. So what other boards, like a Caro board, the retakers? So like for medical board, I understand sometimes psychologically, you need a little bit of time to, recover before you do the next, take the next exam. So what is the waiting time? Maybe just do some kind of the research and looking into it. That's the examination committee.
Are we on comments and questions now, or just comments, or what?
Comments and
Yeah.
questions.
So my view of this is a little different than Mr. Chan's, and I look at the first time pass rate, and it's extremely high. You're looking at 75 to 81%, depending on the ethnic breakdown, but an overall pass rate of 78%. And if you compare that to the bar for lawyers in the state, for example, and Ms. Bojack and I are intimately familiar with that, it's a less than 50% pass rate on the first. And if you look at re-exam test takers, it's extremely low. I think it's even lower than 29%. And I think I say that to give some context and to, I guess, give the educators a bit of a break. I don't think that we should be necessarily looking at this as a deficiency that the schools need to address. I think the reality is for the protection of the industry, the protection of the public, some of these folks shouldn't be licensed acupuncturists. And I think that the fact that they're failing over and over again speaks, I think, to the student and the applicant rather than the school and the programs and what the board can do. So I don't think that we as a board should necessarily look at these statistics and say, what can the schools do or what can we as a board do to make sure that the re-exam pass rate is higher? You know, to me, this is a natural selection process, and going through the process, the exam is there to actually weed out folks who shouldn't be treating patients. And I think that in some ways we, you know, we should be just fine with folks not getting through the re-exam and not getting through the first time. Because if you look, if 78% are getting through the first time, you know, that's extremely high. I mean, that's a really, really high pass rate. And so I guess it's just how two minds can look at these statistics differently. You know, to me, it's, you know, a lot of it's student, a lot of it is the applicant, and like in the law or like in other parts of medicine or, you know, other boards that have similar tests, you know, the test is there for a reason, which is to thankfully weed out folks who shouldn't be dealing with patients. So I think it's extremely helpful. It's a good conversation to have, though.
What we also see is because there's no limit on the number of times you can retake the test, an individual who fails the first time is more likely to fail the second time and then again the fourth. And so if you're having like the 10th time retake, then you're just continuing to affect those variables. Yeah.
You know, following your comment, if some folks should not take an exam and the board cannot determine who is qualified to take an exam, who is not qualified to take an exam, is the retaker. So that's why that we discussed before is that if you fail so many times, you should wait 1 or 2 years. Then you had the time to cooling down to think about, do you like to take again? Then you're doing some series to take again. If you know, I mean, if you wait 1 or 2 years and to think about if you need to take again, should you make some more effort to pass?
Sure.
Because that's what we are address on the retaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, obviously the exam committee is going to take this up. You know, my view is that that really shouldn't be on the board to regulate.
That's right.
Not only to regulate,
Right.
the board cannot regulate.
But I do agree with Mr. Harabinin said, because the exam is for reasons. You know, same thing with the medical board, you know, certain, because it's for public protection. And if they continue not passing the exam, you know, that's a reason for it. I agree.
I've noted
the
too.
Examination committee.
Okay.
Any other questions on that item?
Can I make one clarification? I would just like to say that when the test results go out to the applicants, the test takers, there is a breakdown of the categories on the test. So it's broken down into 5 categories, and they can see which areas they fell deficient in to help them figure out which areas they need to study better.
That's what I'm mentioning. You know, if the school can have that, you know, help this retaker, the witness area, okay, because they can identify it, then it's easy for them to taking an exam and pass the exam.
Any other questions? And with that, I would like to introduce Tammy Stadley. Tammy Stadley is our examination analyst. She's been working as an exam analyst for the last year and roughly quarter, and has been doing a stellar job in reviewing and helping us really update our processes and the selection process. So, Tammy, I leave it to you to discuss our new transition to computer-based testing.
Thank you, Ben. Hello, everybody. I guess I'll start by saying that we did send out a memo to all of the schools a little over a week ago, and I know everyone's anxious to see something on the website. The information that we sent out to the schools was met with some questions and confusion, and so we did want to take the time to revamp some of the information and clarify things better, so we can put a better product onto the website. We do hope that that will be available very shortly, so that all the students can see it for themselves and they won't have to keep calling the schools for information. But I'll start here with some of the basics, and I will touch on some of the questions. I know a representative from South Balo had some specific questions, and I'll make sure that I address those today. So basically, nothing about the exam is changing except the fact that it will be on a computer instead of on a Scantron. So the way that it's scored, the way all that happens, the multiple choice, the breakdown of 175 questions that are scored out of 200, all of that's going to stay the same. It is still a 5-hour exam broken in half. They will get 2.5 hours for the first 100 questions, followed by a half an hour lunch break, and then in the afternoon, another 2.5 hours to complete the remaining 100 questions. Everyone will still need to meet the same qualifications in order to be eligible for the exam. None of that has changed. We are contracting with Psychological Services LLC, known as PSI. They have 17 test sites in California that we will be contracted with, as well as 22 additional sites throughout the country. So our students will be able to find a location close to them and not have to travel. These sites are open 6 days a week, so a student can choose any day, Monday through Saturday. They're closed on Sundays. So that will be a great benefit to everybody. Essentially, the applicants are still going to apply to the board up front. Once they get approval from us, they will pay us their exam fee. Once the exam fee is received, we submit their eligibility to PSI. Then the applicant will schedule directly with PSI. This will not be available until October. So anybody that's looking online right now at PSI's websites is not going to see an option for the California acupuncture exam. Okay, so October will be when this goes live. That will be the first that anybody will be having contact with PSI, the first that anyone will be able to schedule an exam with PSI. So once October comes around, the exam will be offered continuously. So that person can take the exam in October, November, December, anytime, 6 days a week, I assume, except for holidays. Okay, let's see. What else do we want to talk about? We are looking at still having 6 months in between exams. So instead of just offering it twice a year, if someone fails the exam, they will need to wait 6 months to take it again. Now, that was one of the questions that came up. However, if someone can't make the exam, this is better because they can reschedule the exam. They only have to wait 6 months if they've actually taken it and failed. Okay. In terms of the way the exam is set up on the computer, it is set up so that an applicant can go back and look over previous questions. There's a flag in there. They can mark questions that they want to specifically go back to, so they can go back to ones they've flagged. They can also just go back to ones that maybe they skipped. There's an option to go back to any ones that they didn't answer. So that's really nice. Special needs, those will still be accommodated. The applicant will still need to fill out the proper forms with the board, and upon approval, we will send those accommodations to the testing company. So if they need time and a half, that will still be given. They'll be given the time and a half in the morning, the lunch, the time and a half in the afternoon. And the testing sites also have a private room. So for someone that's in need, they do have a private room available with different devices as needed for the applicants. And then results. In the beginning, we're still expecting that to come from the board directly, not from the testing company. And those results will definitely be sent out within the 30 days that's listed in our regulations. And we don't know how that will change over time, but definitely within that 30 days, they will have their results. I think that's pretty much the basics that I have.
One other item that I wanted to point out is that at this point, we're no longer going to be accepting conditional or awarding conditional approvals because we apply on a flow basis. The board isn't going to do all this upfront work waiting for students to complete their program. We're going to be only accepting applicants who've completed the required curriculum and all the other requirements. So that should help both the board and the schools not having to print out numerous transcripts of unofficial capacities and send them in and whatnot, and us tracking everything. So it'll allow for a more complete package going into the exam. And as Tammy mentioned, it is a 6-month delay to take the next version of the exam if you failed one. Any questions from the members? Straightforward.
So for the reschedule, they can just reschedule any time, the first time taker.
Yeah.
If they can't.
They'll be able to work with PSI to change the and unless they've lost their eligibility phase with PSI. Then there's a cancellation fee, and then they have to reschedule with PSI, I believe.
I think Amy's saying if they failed.
If they failed?
No, I mean the first time. You know, they registered the first time because sometimes there's an emergency, they can't take the test.
And they
right?
can contact PSI. There's
PSI.
only a penalty if it's not within 48 hours of their exam. So if they call like the week before, they can reschedule directly with PSI. The board's not involved.
And then they can take it any times, you know, available for them. Okay, yeah, that's just my question on that.
I think another boon is that there's testing locations throughout the U.S. So our out-of-state schools, people don't have to fly to California to take those exams. You know, as well as all of our in-state schools, we have locations throughout California. So when you're looking at reasonable accommodations as well, you'll be subject to the availability of that location. But the timing is just, is that room available that day?
Thank you. Any questions from the board members? Okay, so now open to the public.
Thank you for this great monumental step forward. And I think it's really lighten up the load on our associate dean that's working on that double shift, getting those pre-exam, post-exams, and also, you know, for the students to be able to take it has made a big impact on their future. Also, you know, pay back their student loans so they don't have to possibly wait another 6 months once they're done with the program and waiting for those dates. My question is, just as you showed the published results for the last exam, you showed the schools and the percentages, so the educators know how they're doing, and also the consumers know how the schools are doing. And of course, it's a selection process for prospective students to see how they do on the state board exams. Would you publish this twice a year like you have? Because this is continuous, so it's not like a whole cohort coming to take the exam. Would you publish it at the end of each month or at the end of each quarter or twice a year? So that's the question. Would these be published in this similar format as you have posted for the last 18 years on your website under the statistics? So that's an important question for the schools to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim, Empress College. I'd like the board to reconsider the 6-month wait for a re-examinee. I know that this couldn't work before when we had the paper-based exam, but this, you know, the issue of gainful employment is a huge issue for our graduates. You know, it's a national issue. We need to report to our Accreditation Commission and to BPPE on our placement rates. The schools are evaluated on this. So it's in our interest to get our students licensed and to be out practicing as soon as possible. So if a student, graduate fails an exam and they have to wait 6 months, this is quite a burden on our students. And so now that the board has decided to move to computer-based exam, to reducing the wait time before a student can take the exam again would be very, very much welcome. At Empress College, we offer our graduation exam quarterly basis. That works very well. So giving students 3 months time to review and retake the exam has worked out very, very well for Empress College. And so we hope that the exam committee can consider this. Again, it's an issue for our students, and it would really, really benefit them. Thank you.
Thank you.
In your agree, I like to give the board a highly recommend, and I think this is one of the major improvement, significant step for the board in the last 40 years. Congratulations, Tammy, and make it happen. And congratulations, all the board members work collectively with the staff and make this happen. And I think this is a historic moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really only have 2 points of clarification for Tammy, and the first one is the fee going to be changing? Is there going to be a change in fee based on this new method and PSI's involvement? And secondly, are you still considering or still planning to have the test be taken in one sitting, that is at one day and not with a break? As in other national certifications, you can take modules on different days, but I wanted to see if you would have to take it all in one day. Thank you.
Thank you.
From Southfield University. I also requested to reconsideration about the retaker. I know you mentioned about the 6 months for the waiting period, but still I agree with Dr. Yoon from Empress College that it is from the student burden, and it's not easy to waiting another 6 months, especially for the international student in our school. They have to maintain their visa status or the OPT terminations on that. So please reconsider about those the retakers on that. And then the second, I know Ben, you mentioned about the transcript. I know previously we are sending the initial transcript and then the final transcript, but this time the state board, they only require for the final transcript. Am I correct on that?
Yes, just to clarify that, yes, we're only accepting final transcripts now.
Okay, and then the last question that regarding about the foreign transcript. I know we do have a foreign student in our school. Understand that the official transcript must come directly from the university to the acupuncture board. However, it is mentioned that sealed official transcript can be accepted from the student. Is this correct on that?
That I can't respond to right now, can I?
What's the question again?
Question was that the sealed official transcript can be accepted from the student.
We weren't talking about the regulatory requirements for the transcripts.
Okay.
I mean, yes, I can't answer that right now.
Okay.
So let us discuss that, and maybe we can.
You can bring it up at the next board meeting, or you can send an email to our exam unit, and they can respond to that question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gina Huang, Five Branches University. I actually have a question to have some clarification question. On the timeline that we received from CAB, it says the students have to apply 120 days prior to the desired examination date. And then Ben mentioned that the students should apply when they graduate. So my question is, if they have to apply when they finish the program, and then there is 120 days required time period prior to the examination date, that means it's still a 4 months wait period. And once they finish the exam for another month to get a result, that's still a 5 to 6 months timeline we're looking at. So is there any possibility that can apply before they graduate, like how we're doing right now? And I understand on the timeline also says there's a 45 days review time. The student will receive an email response from the board. Either they qualify to take the exam or they are incomplete. So if they allowed to apply before they graduate, and school won't be able to provide a final transcript within the 45 days period. So all the students that they apply, they will be incomplete status. So that's just my concern and clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and listen to us. We have a lot of comments here. Thank you, Tammy, for the order and the board, the other reform of the test. And this is one step, but took how many years for board? 10, 20 years. Anyway, so I think the good test has three components. One is the quality. Number one is the quality, how to test the minimum components. And the two is the convenience for student. And the three is the cost. So put all three together. Number one is the cost related with quality. So about Tammy just mentioned, nothing changed, only the way online, it's online, computer, electronic. So I heard some student, some people, I take tests many years ago, but I heard some students said they like the NCCOM test. One is because they are convenience, electronic. Another reason, of course, they said it's kind of easier. California is more difficult, but it reflects that California's quality is better. But meanwhile, the question design, I know NCCOM, they have a lot of money, they spend time, and a lot of people come in to do the research every year. And I don't know if we can do better job to put more people, more money to design a better test. And come back to the fee. California only charge $600, about $600 fee, and for many years never changed. Should you consider the fee to coordinate with the quality of the test? And we just cannot, as a California Acupuncture stakeholder, we really cannot let NCCOM come in to take over care at this point, because they test the school, the state at different level. Some level is so low, and this like give the nurse or doctor the same test, and we cannot. They have to have the same education standard as California. Then, if they are ready, then they can compete with care to see which is better. But right now, most important is the quality of the test. We support KO test, but meanwhile, we urge KO to do some research to design better test questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Take a break before. Okay, so we will take a break, and now it's 11:16, so 11:30 we will come back all together, move to the next item, enforcement. Thank you.